You have cancer. 3 words that change a life forever. We would like to offer another 3 words. Be an overcomer. Welcome to the 1% Podcast, where our conversations with other cancer warriors, survivors, and caregivers allows us to give you that extra boost you need to face your challenge head on, live life from a new perspective, and forge a path that keeps you moving free and clear. Now, welcome your host and cancer survivor, Truett Taylor.
Welcome to today's episode of the 1% Podcast, the show where we dig deep with cancer warriors, survivors, and caregivers in order to give you the 1% you need to keep pushing forward. Today, our guest on the show is Lindsay. Lindsay was 32 years old when she was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. She's currently a stylist at Girl Meets Bonga, and she lives in Pasadena, California. Lindsay, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing great. So the reason I decided that you would be a good guest, I don't think I've told you this or not yet, but I was scrolling through Instagram and I came across your profile and your story, and I was looking at the way that you told your story through a real candid photos that you had up and just your humor, and I thought, this would be an amazing person for people to connect with because she's got a sense of humor about this, but she's also really raw and real. And I thought that was perfect for people to listen to and to really be able to pull from your story and, take the pieces that work for them and apply it to their life and their journey.
Thank you. Thank you.
So tell all of our listeners why you feel like it's important for you to share your story with everyone.
Sorry. For me, it's just about giving my life purpose. Going through something like this can be really, really tough. And I kind of look at life in a way of like, I go through certain things for a reason. Like there's a reason why this is happening. And that's kind of how I felt in this situation, because cancer was definitely something that was never on my radar. And the fact that I'm going through it for me means it's because of the way that I am and the way that I am able to share my story and be very open and very raw about all of it and try to be funny at times if I can. I want to give my life and give this journey a purpose.
If there's one takeaway you hope our listeners receive today, what do you think it is that they should be listening for?
Well, there's a lot of things. It's hard to just pinpoint one, but it's obviously, you want to give people hope and comfort so they know like you're not the only one going through this. Like there are others out there, and these little moments that we have and we think it's just us that it's happening to. If I can just comfort one person and let them know like, hey, you're not by yourself, and kind of give them the strength to fight for themselves or be that little voice in that moment that they needed to hear. Like, I want to try to do that for them.
I think that's amazing. That's one thing to realize, that you aren't alone. And a lot of us that go through this, if you're like myself, it's not the easiest to go to support groups and, things of that nature and stuff, but you get to come to an episode that you can play over and over again, like Lindsay's here, where you won't feel alone. You'll feel like someone's actually with you who's walking through stage 4 cancer. So Lindsay, I'm excited to talk to you today. So let's go ahead and get started. Tell us a little bit about your life prior to your diagnosis.
Sure. I grew up in Florida. I was a pretty active kid. I played soccer a few seasons and mostly played softball. I played softball right up until high school, and then, had to get a job. But I always stayed pretty active. I became a hairstylist right out of high school. I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I've been a hairstylist now for 17 years. It was always a dream of mine to move to LA, and I wasn't sure it was going to happen, but it did. It didn't happen exactly how I thought it would, but I'm here. So I moved here when I was 24 and started working at a salon in downtown LA. And it was really exciting because I went from doing like prom and homecoming to like the Emmy Awards, the Oscars, the Grammys. And so that was kind of my goal as a hairstylist, is I'm going to be the best hairstylist I can be. I met my husband 7 years ago. We have 2 kids. My daughter, who will actually be 11 in a couple of weeks, she was from a prior relationship and kind of what brought me to LA. But she was very young when I met my husband. And then I have a son who's 4 years old. So yeah, and that's pretty much my story.
Okay. Florida to LA. It's a big journey across the country.
Yeah, it was exciting.
How was your overall health?
I've always been pretty healthy. I mean, I was aware of health issues because my dad had a lot of heart issues and there was a lot of things going on his side of the family with that. So I was very aware of that at a young age. And that kind of kept me conscious of my diet. And like I said, I was very active. Even as, I grew up, I would go on and off of working out, and health-wise, I'd never had anything too serious that was going on with me.
Right. So share with us the moments that were leading up to your diagnosis. What kind of changes did you notice that led you to go to the doctor?
So now looking back, I can see that there may have been glimpses of this even before I really became aware of what was going on. And that was in 2014. I had my son in January and had a C-section. And, after a couple months, I had decided, I want to get back in shape. And, so I decided I was going to run a marathon. So during training, I started having some stomach issues and went in to see the doctor, and they felt I was just constipated. And so it made sense. I had just had a C-section. My body's trying to get back together, and I'm training for a marathon. So, I thought maybe I'm just pushing it too much and whatnot. And so that kind of happened a few times. And I even ended up changing doctors because I felt like, it's like, why aren't we looking into other things? Because this is something that keeps coming back and stuff, but it made sense. So I kind of just let it go, and I did run my marathon. So I guess fast forward to September of 2015, and I noticed a lump in my pelvis, and we were working out a lot. So I thought maybe it's scar tissue buildup, and my husband's a physical therapist. So I asked him, like, hey, you think this might be scar tissue? Maybe we could do some work on it, see if we can break it up. And he's like, yeah, that it sounds like it could be. And so we worked on it, and about a month went by and it didn't go away. And he made the comment, Lindsay, I think this is something else. Maybe we should go in and get it checked out. And so I did. I went in, and they could feel it. And so they were like, let's do an ultrasound. So they did the ultrasound, and they're like, something's there, but we can't tell what it is. Let's get you in for an MRI. We'll call you. And I don't know what happened there, but it took them a very long time to get back in touch with me. So, other symptoms started coming on. The pain started to get worse. It was almost like a burning pain on my skin, like when I was standing up, and food started to smell weird and taste weird. And then I thought, oh, maybe I'm pregnant. And so I started taking a bunch of pregnancy tests, and all negative. And so I'm like, I don't know. And I started losing a lot of weight. Then the holidays came up, so there was a lot going on, and, kind of just put it to the side. Like, I can deal with this. I'm kind of stubborn when it comes to that stuff, and I can tough through this. And so by January, though, I started having blood in my stool, and I was like, okay, something serious is going on. I haven't heard about this MRI. I've got to get back into figuring out what this is. And went in to see my primary care doctor and told him everything that had been going on leading up to seeing him. And he was like, I'm going to get you in for a colonoscopy, just to rule out anything serious. Like, you're young, it's probably nothing. And I want to get you in for a CT scan. And he's like, I can actually get you in this afternoon. And I was like, I'll be back. So I went in, got my CT scan, and then 2 days later, I got the phone call.
So waiting for your CT scan, obviously you're probably pretty nervous about that. When it came down to getting your actual diagnosis, so And it was probably hard to kind of relive that moment with us right now where you're sitting there in the doctor's office, you're waiting, he walks into the room and he starts telling you your diagnosis.
Well, my story is even better than than that. I was actually at work. I was at work and I was in the middle of cutting one of my clients' hair, and my receptionist came over and she's like, "Lindsay, I have your doctor on the phone. Do you want to take this call?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm kind of waiting on something." So I excused myself from my client and walked to our break room and got on the phone, and he's like, "Mrs. Snipes, are you sitting down?" And I'm like, "No." So I leaned against a chair and was like, "Yeah, sure." And he's like, "Miss Snipes, I'm sorry to tell you that you have cancer. It's in more than one location, and I need you to get to the hospital as soon as you can. What hospital are you going to go to, so I can call ahead and let them know that you're coming?" So it's kind of one of those like the movies or shows where time just freezes and you're kind of the only one moving around in it. And that's how I felt. Like everything just stood still. Like it's just one of those days, like I will vividly remember the rest of my life. And I didn't know what to do. I was like, what do I tell people? I have a man that I'm not finished cutting his hair. Like, do I have someone else do it? And I don't know what came over me, but I just kind of like, okay, this is what it is. Go finish your haircut. And I did. I went back out and finished my client's hair. And I apologized to him wherever he is out there because it was probably not my best haircut. And then he left, and I realized I needed to tell my business partner that I couldn't do a wedding trial with her that weekend because I have cancer. And that's kind of the moment it really hit me, is when I had to say out loud those words. And I broke down and cried to her. And then I was like, I have to call my husband. Now I have to tell him. And, I did. I called him. I remember sitting in the stairwell of our stairs just saying, I need you to meet me at the hospital because I have cancer. And he's like, okay. And he met me there, and it took a little while before I got the actual final diagnosis, because my tumors, I had one in my colon, obviously, and then one on my left ovary. And I guess it's not typical that it transfers that way. So they weren't sure if I had ovarian cancer or colon cancer. So I spent 5 days in the hospital, being tested, poked and prodded, and literally rolled in my bed out at like 2 a.m. for a scan. And by day 5, they came in with the final diagnosis of stage 4 colon cancer. And, it's weird because I don't feel like it hit me like it hit my husband, and like my mother-in-law are both in the medical field, and I could see the terror on their face. And I kind of was like, why am I not feeling this way? Like for me, I was like, yeah, say those words, but how do we fix this? Like in my mind, it was, no, dying is not an option. I have 2 young children. Like, okay, so what do we do? Let's do this. And yeah, it was really interesting. I took a moment to myself and walked in the bathroom and looked myself in the mirror and was just like, Lindsay, you are going to beat this. Like, you got this. If you have to live with cancer, then you just have to live with cancer. If Magic Johnson, you're going to be the Magic Johnson of cancer. And that's kind of what it was.
So as you're in the bathroom looking at yourself, like trying to convince yourself that you're going to beat this, and then really talking yourself into, once you leave out of that room to go ahead and start fighting this, what's motivating you at that point?
I think a lot of it is obviously my kids. Obviously my family. I wasn't ready. They're too young. I was like, my kids aren't young. I haven't watched them graduate high school. I haven't watched them. My son is 4. Like, he wouldn't even remember me if, I left now. Like, he hasn't had enough time with me. Like, for me, it was that. And not only that, just, I wasn't done living. Like, I had things I still wanted to do. And I was like, I'm not ready. this is not happening right now. So I don't know if something in me just clicked and I was like, okay, we're going to do this.
It sounds like the desire to live outweighed the desire to die for you.
Absolutely.
And I know that's kind of weird to say, but I think anytime we have a crisis in our life, there's two choices typically. You go towards the anger and the hatred and the mad and the why me side, or you can turn it around and go towards the fighting, the desire to live, the desire to push forward side. So,
and that's actually, that's exactly how I've been this entire time. And that's kind of how I look at life, is like, you have two choices. Either you can give in or you can move forward. You know, it's like, it's only going to be bad for this time. There's always light at the end of the tunnel.
So tell us how your husband responded to this, knowing that you guys, hadn't been married too terribly long, right? And then all of a sudden this happens. What did that do to your relationship? Did it strengthen it? Did it kind of make you guys readjust things a little bit, or what?
Well, I mean, obviously you have to readjust a little bit. And actually we've only been married almost a year now. We've been together for a really long time, but we weren't even married at the time. So, he has been amazing through this all. He's just kind of been my strength when I do have my moments of weakness. He's just like, Lindsay, we'll get through this. And he's always been able to kind of make me feel better, because there was a lot of times, and it was mostly, I think, just insecurities that I would start to feel. And, I lost a ton of weight. I didn't feel attractive. I'm like, he's not going to like me anymore. And look at all this stuff I'm putting him through. And he just kind of was always there in those moments to be like, I'm here. The last thing you have to worry about is me being here. I am here. And so he really has been, just incredible through it all, because there's so many times I'm like, if I don't know, how can you do this? How can you stay? There's just so much. So he really has been my rock. Not to say he hasn't gone through. He definitely went inward in the beginning, because I think he just didn't know what to do. Like, what do I say? What do I do? So I think for him, it was just actions of being there.
What about your children? How have they responded to this?
So we in the beginning, I wasn't sure. I didn't know how to tell them. I didn't know what to say. Not so much for my son, because he's so young, like he wouldn't get it anyways. But for my daughter, she's older, and she could definitely see that something was going on. And at first I was like, I'm not ready to tell her. But then when we finally sat her down, because I could tell she was kind of having a moment of feeling like we were keeping something from her, or like we were upset with her about something. And I was like, okay, I need to tell her. And so it was kind of an interesting conversation, because, I told her I had cancer, and she had this look of like surprise on her eyes. And I was just like, but I'm not going to lose my hair, because the treatment I'm on, you don't completely lose your hair, the treatment I was on. And she took like this big sigh of relief and was like, like, okay, you don't have the bad cancer. And like, for her, that was like a sign, like, of what I was doing. Like, was she right? No, the cancer I have is very bad. But I kind of left it there. I was like, if that makes her feel relieved, I will leave it there, because she is so young, and I didn't want cancer to become our life. Like, our life was still our life. It's not cancer's life. We're not going to live around cancer. Cancer's that's just happening, but that's not our life. And that's kind of how we've done things. And I feel like, yes, they're aware of it. And yes, they know I had limitations, but we didn't change for that. So I think that really helped them to process and kind of get through it.
So once you started going through treatment, share with everyone what kind of treatment plan you were on.
Okay, so since I didn't have a complete blockage, they didn't want to go in and do any type of surgery. They're like, we'd rather do 6 months of treatment, like shrink everything, chemo, I should say, 6 months of chemo, to shrink everything down as much as we can, and then we'll talk about surgery. So I started out with Folfox, which is pretty much a primary chemo treatment that someone with colon cancer would go through. And I always like to explain to my friends, like, chemo is kind of like going to the bar and ordering your favorite drink, like no chemo treatment. Chemo treatments are different for different types of cancer, which is something that was new to me going through this. I thought you get cancer, you have chemo, you lose your hair. And so when I actually heard I wasn't going to lose my hair, I was a little disappointed, I have to say, because I'm like, if there was one reason to see myself bald, this would be it. And I don't even get it. But so anyways, I started on FolFox, but also at the same time, I decided I needed a way to fight because I felt very helpless in this moment. And so I reached out and found a really amazing nutritionist. His name's Robert. And started working with him. And it was really cool working with him because he took my blood work and he really based all the supplements that I was on off of the deficiencies that I had. He also gave me a lot of supplements to help with my side effects. As you know, you've gone through this. One of the biggest things that we go through for any chemo treatment is, nausea, vomiting, that kind of thing. I never got sick once on my treatment. And I really, really believe it's because I was taking these supplements and changing my diet to really keep my immune system as strong as I could during this time of chemo, because it just really, really wipes you out. So I did 6 months of chemo, and then we started talking about surgeries. And I was sent to a surgeon who was like, I think you would be a good candidate for this specialized surgery called HIPEC. I don't know what HIPEC means. You'll have to Google it. But it's a pretty intensive surgery. And basically what it is they go in and do the typical, they go in and remove any tumors that you have in your body. And then what they do at the end is they take these 2 large prongs and they put them in your abdomen and close it up, and they run a heated chemo for 90 minutes. So I had this done down in San Diego at UC San Diego, and they were amazing. My doctor, Dr. Lowy, is one of the top guys that does this surgery. And more than just the surgery, I mean, obviously he was an amazing doctor, but his bedside manners were incredible. Like, he made me feel like a human and not just a patient coming through. Like, I remember in one of my days of recovery, like, he was leaving for a trip and he literally came in before he went to the airport to check on me and see how I was doing. But my surgery was about 7.5 hours, and they removed a portion of my colon. They had to remove a portion of my ureter and reconstruct that. I had both of my ovaries removed just because they said they'd let me leave one if I wanted, because I was so young, and they didn't know if I wanted to have more kids. But I already had 2, and so I decided it'd be best to take them both, because they said it makes the chances higher that you could get cancer on the other side. So I was like, just take the ovaries. They took a portion of my liver and then my appendix, and I had a spot on my small intestine that they removed. So it was a really intense surgery, and I spent a month in the hospital afterwards recovering. It was a long journey, and then I got through it and was 9 months cancer-free. But then it did come back, and I went back on the same FolFox for another 6 months, and now I'm currently off of it. I did my last treatment in March.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
So as you're going through all this, I'm sure people are, especially in your line of work, you're in front of a lot of people. You probably know a ton of people and tons of clients that you'll have that you're working with are asking about you and everything. So what kind of advice have you gotten? So people, I think they can look at you, and you can, if you read them enough, you can kind of see what they're thinking. But what kind of advice have you gotten, both good and bad, since you've been diagnosed?
So I wouldn't say I have too much bad advice. I mean, I think there was only one time, and this is just the way I interpreted it. I had gone for a second opinion to a doctor, and because I had lost so much weight, their focus was like, you need to gain weight back. I had gotten down to 94 pounds. So he had told me, you need to eat the McDonald's. And I was just like, no, I don't think I need to eat the McDonald's. Because for me, I was like, I didn't have anything genetically connected to why this happened. So my reasoning was it has to be what I was putting into my body that had to potentially be a factor in this. And that's just my opinion. So when he said that, I was just like, I don't think you're the doctor for me. But other than that, I wouldn't say I got bad advice. It was just interesting how many of my friends became doctors after I was diagnosed. I got a lot of messages and a lot of people telling me, their advice of how to cure my cancer. And, it's like, you got to smoke weed, and you don't do chemo, and you got to take these vitamins, and you got to go to this country and do this treatment. And I was just overwhelmed. I was like, I don't even know what's going on with my body. And the doctors are telling me this, and then you are my friends, and you are telling, it was just very overwhelming to kind of go through that. And I really appreciated it, because I did get, it was nice to have them reach out and them care in that way. And I know their intentions. And actually some of the things that they did send to me, I looked into and was like, I can incorporate this, and I can do this. So yeah, the advice, for the most part, I think the best advice I got, I had one moment in my treatment where I had watched a documentary, and it was talking about just how bad, chemo was, and you shouldn't do it, and, it's just poisoning you. And I was terrified. Like, I was like, Matt, I don't know if I want to go into my next treatment. Like, what do I do? I'm so scared. And took a breath and was like, you know what, I'm going to ask some people. And so I have two friends of mine that I trust very, very much. And they're both nurses. And I was like, I sat down and talked to them and was like, what do you think I should do? I do have my nutritionist I'm working with, and I am doing chemo. Like, what do I do? And they're like, Lindsay, what you're doing is working. Like, just stay focused. And so I was like, okay, but they're on the medical side, so of course they're going to tell me to keep doing chemo. And so I was like, if anybody's going to go against it or say, yeah, let's try it natural, it'd be my nutritionist. So I went to him and I asked him the same question. And I was really surprised to hear him say, Lindsay, what you're doing is working. Like, just stay focused. And I needed that. I needed that in that moment to kind of reassure me, like, okay, I'm okay. It's okay. So, yeah.
If you could recommend someone, everyone has something different they want to be said or done or treated. And I'm a firm believer in you treat people how they want to be treated. But what kind of advice do you give to someone who maybe has a friend or a coworker or a family member who's going through cancer? What kind of advice do you give them or things to say or do towards someone who's experiencing what you have going on?
I've actually had someone come and ask me that same question. Like, I have a friend that's going through this. Like, what should I do, Lindsay? And I just tell people, just be there for them, because the hardest thing is we know what's going on with us. We know what we've been told. We know we're facing death, but the truth is we are all facing death. And just because we've been told that doesn't mean that doesn't change it for anyone else. Like, it's kind of a joke, and I don't mean to be so harsh, but people would look at me and they gave me that look of, I'm so sorry you're dying. And my thought was just, wait, you are too. Like, we all have an end. Like, just because I was told. And in some ways I feel it's a bit of a blessing because I live a little differently. But I just tell people, just be there for somebody. Just say, hey, I'm here. Do you need me? Don't be pushy. Don't treat them like they can't do anything. Cause that was my biggest pet peeve, is everybody wanted to like cook me food and clean my house. And yes, I probably should have taken them up on all these offers, but it made me feel like I was broken. And it was like, I'm stronger than this. Like, you gotta just be here. And I actually had to sit down with friends and tell them that, like, I can't have you upset every time I see you. Like, that's not the space that I'm in. I'm trying to be positive and I'm trying to fight. And I just need you to be here for me. And I need you to kind of be at this level and meet them at that level, meet them at their needs and what they need, and just be there and just keep things as normal as possible. I know that's kind of hard to say, but that's all we want to feel. We just want to feel like we're normal again. And so that would be the advice I would give to someone who is trying to comfort somebody in that situation.
I think when we're making the decision every day to get up, to try to feel good, to all the treatments that we're going through, we're already making like a tough decision and a conscious effort to try to get through that. I think the last thing we want to do is have to try to tell people exactly what to do. Like
Yeah.
whenever they come to you and they're asking, what can I do for you? I mean, just
it almost feels like you end up having to comfort them. You're like trying to make them feel better about the situation that you're in. So yeah, I just say, just meet people where they're at. If it is somebody who does need that, like be that for them. But if it's somebody who says, I'm strong and I got this and I'm good, like, and I want to joke about this, then be that person too for them.
So during everyone's journey, we all have pivotal moments where things that'll happen that are just dramatically get our mind back on focusing to live, or just really pushing forward when we have those terrible moments where we just don't think we can do this anymore. Can you describe a couple of these moments, or either one in particular, where maybe you thought about not necessarily giving up, period, but you just were at your lowest, but then something miraculous or something very, I guess, unexpected happened to really get your mind focused back on, keeping fighting and keeping moving forward?
Yeah. So in the beginning, I had a lot of momentum. Like I was like full force, like I'm going to do this. I think for me, my lowest point came when the cancer came back, because I was done. I was like, wow, but it almost seemed too good to be true at the time, because I was like, who does this in less than a year and gets to where they don't have any cancer? And so I went, like I said, 9 months, and then it came back, and I struggled really hard to kind of find that motivation again in the beginning, because I had experienced what being normal again felt like, and then to have it come back, it made me feel really defeated. And one night in particular, I don't know what was going on, but there must have been a lot going on that I was just really stressed about, on top of starting treatment again. And I was just bawling and crying. And I remember going upstairs to my room because I didn't want the kids to see me so upset. And I like got to that moment where I literally said, if this is how I'm supposed to go, just take me, because I'm so done and I'm so over going through this and trying to be strong and trying to fight through it, because it's hard. It gets hard just because you laugh and joke about it, and because you get up and you fight, it doesn't mean you don't have those moments of just weakness. And it's okay to be weak. But in that moment, I was so done. And thankfully for my husband, he came up and he just kind of let me vent and let me say all those things out loud, because I think that was the other thing is, I'm very stubborn. And so to admit my weakness was really hard. And for him to just let me just lay it all out there, no matter what it was, no matter how harsh it sounded, he just listened. And he's like, Lindsay, you're going to be okay. And we are here to pick you up. Like, you don't have to always be the strong person. And so I think I just needed that moment of release to kind of get myself back together. But at the same time, through the whole process, I'm a huge believer in what you put out, like the law of attraction. What you put out, you get back. So I've always, call it God, call it the universe, whoever it is that you speak to, I speak to him often. And I do. Everything I need, everything I want, I put it out there. If I need strength in something, I put it out there, and it never fails that it comes back. So that's kind of what I do in those moments. Yes. And then you'll see those things happen. That person will call you and check on you in that moment. You'll be scrolling through social media and you'll see a video and you're like, I needed to see that today, or I needed to read that today. And I think if you can kind of keep that mentality of putting out that positive energy when you can, or just saying it out loud when you feel weak, something will show up to be there in that moment that you need it. It never fails.
I love hear people talk about God's timing because it is so perfect. And the people that come across in our lives, or the things, again, that you scroll through, or, you know, if that certain moment where you were just at your lowest and you got a text message, or someone, you know, dropped you like a message on social media somewhere, just like encouraging you when you're like, God, how did they know that at this moment is exactly what I needed to hear? But I love hearing stories of God's timing because it is, again, it's flawless and it's perfect. And it just gives you so much hope to know that, hey, there's a lot bigger force behind this than just me having to sit here and struggle. You know, what are the odds that this person came into my life at this time, or this doctor, or you know, just this moment where someone decided, hey, I'm thinking about Lindsay and I'm going to reach out to her and, you know, and give her what she needed. And those thoughts had to be implanted into somebody else to actually transfer over to you. And, you know, and so I think if anyone's listening right now, that if you have someone on your mind that you're thinking of at this moment, you know, whether they have cancer or not, I always feel like you need to, you know, reach out and tell that person, hey, I'm thinking about you. Hey, don't scare them and say, if you got something going on, I just want to check in on you, nothing like that. But just like, let someone know how much you appreciate them, whether it's a family member or a friend or whoever, because it's one of those things that you're loaning out your strength, you're loaning out your encouragement, and you never know what someone's going through at that moment, and that may be exactly what they needed to hear.
Definitely.
So you're finished up second round of treatment, you said back in March, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So round 2, you're over with, right? So how has your life been since you finished up treatment? I always feel like there's a pre-cancer you and then a post-cancer you. So someone who's having to, had to go through it a second time, how does that feel different from when you finished up your first dose?
Yeah. So I felt really good at finishing up this time. I don't know what it was about it. I mean, yes, it was a lot harder as far as, emotionally trying to adjust to it, but I felt really good finishing up this time because I've been doing a lot of research on just natural things that I can do. And that's a big thing. Like, I want to tell people is you have to be your own advocate. Like, doctors are great. And I love my doctors, but I've realized, like, doctors are humans and they don't know everything. And unfortunately, the way the system is here, they don't know a lot about nutrition. And I feel like that's been a huge part in my success, is changing my lifestyle as far as eating and supplements and staying active, even if that's just moving, just a walk. You don't have to go work out 30 minutes at the gym. And I know I'm totally sidetracking here. Sorry. But yeah, so for me, I've really been sticking to that, but it's crazy because recently I started having panic attacks and they were coming out of nowhere, and I wasn't sure what was going on because I was like, I don't feel like I'm thinking about anything, but I do have a lot going on. And what I didn't put together was I was due for some blood work, and I think I was scared. I know I was scared of getting that bad blood report back, hearing, well, we think something's going on again. We need to do a scan. And so I'm not sure what that looks like going forward. I did decide to start going to see a therapist to kind of talk about this stuff, because things that I thought I had put behind me, they're still down there. And what I want to do moving forward is I want to be able to try to stay in that positive zone, because, it's kind of like post-traumatic disorder. You go through something like this and you still have a ways to go before you're in the clear. So it's like you want to let go and relax and be happy. But at the same time, you're like, I got to be prepared. So I think that just always stays with you, or at least it has for me.
How's your perception changed on life now?
Oh, it's interesting. I tell people, it's weird to say this, but cancer was almost a blessing for me. Right before I was diagnosed, my son had to have a major surgery when he was born, and that put me through a lot, but he's healthy, perfectly healthy now. And then a month after that, my dad had passed, and I really lost the purpose of life. I felt I didn't have a purpose. I didn't know where I was or who I was anymore. But once I got that diagnosis, like something changed. And even a friend of mine, my business partner, said, Lindsay, I don't know what it is, but there is just this glow about you now. Like before, it just seemed like you didn't know what was going on anymore, or where you were, who you were. And then all of a sudden it's like you found your purpose and who you are. So it's like, in some ways, cancer was a blessing for me, because it did change me. It changed the way I looked at life. It made me slow down and go, wow, okay, we all have only a certain amount of time on this earth. And since we all know what our end story is, all we can do is like, what do you want that story to look like in between? And for me, it wasn't a 9-to-5 job. Like, I have dreams and goals and things that I want to accomplish, and getting cancer put that into perspective for me. Like, wow, I don't know how much time I have. Maybe I have 20 years, maybe I have 50 years, maybe I have 5 years. I don't know. So all I know is every single day for me is going to be, with intention. Like I'm going to try to slow down a little bit. I'm going to try to be kinder to somebody. I'm going to, not get so upset when I'm driving. It was interesting when I would go into the clinic to get treatment. I always thought, I wish everybody could experience the feeling in here, because everyone was so patient. We would wait in line to check in, and nobody was upset because they were running late. You're sitting in the clinic and people come up and talk to you and tell you their stories. And it's like, this is who we should be, no matter if you're sick or not. And that made, I don't know, it just opened me up, and it gives me so much like passion and feeling about life now. So yeah, I mean, it really changed me.
Do you find your conversations with your clients have changed since all this?
Oh yeah. I love talking about life. I love talking about people's dreams and what do they want to do. And I hope with my story, that it makes them go, what am I so scared of? If she's not afraid to do this and she's going through this, what am I so scared of? So yeah, I love kind of digging in with people and like, what do you want to do? Like, what are your dreams? Like, do those things. Like, don't be afraid. Like, at least try, because what's the worst that's going to happen? I mean, yeah, say no. So then you change your path a little bit. I mean, we all kind of go through it, and I don't think we put it into perspective that those things are happening anyway. So we may as well make it like towards something meaningful.
Yeah, fear enables us from doing so many things. I had someone approach me one time, and they were talking about being good at certain things and stuff like that, and they were like, well, I don't feel like I'm good at anything. And my response was, you just haven't tried enough things yet, because there's something out there that you're really good at that you're just scared to do. So quit being scared and live an intentional life, like you just mentioned, and move forward with that and get to experience the most, because again, our days are numbered, and that's not a bad thing. And so, while we're here, we have so much that we've been instructed to accomplish, and our life story is still being written every day. Just because you have a diagnosis that, may shorten yours, you still have a story left that's still being written. So I love the way that you say that you're intentional and you're able to share your story with people, and your advice and your conversations and stuff have changed. If you could give one piece of advice for someone listening today that may be a little low with a diagnosis, or maybe they're worried about their cancer coming back. I tend to have that a lot from people that I talk to. What piece of advice would you give to someone who is afraid that their cancer may come back?
For me, I think just learn to be aware of your body. Learn about your body. Learn about the things that are out there. I mean, don't overwhelm yourself, because in the beginning, I had a hard time looking into anything about cancer, because to me, doing anything like that or sharing my story or any of that stuff made me feel like I was committing to the cancer. And so I think just really learn who you are. It's kind of this journey of learning who you are and not being afraid to get the help you need if you need help. It's hard to do that, especially if you're someone like me, where I feel like I can take care of everything myself. I've always been that person. But don't be afraid to say, hey, I need a vent. Can I vent? Like, find that person that you can be real with. And that's the other thing, is just be honest. Just be honest with yourself and your feelings and what you're going through. Because what you don't want to do is hold on to stress, because that's not going to do you any good. It's not going to do any good. So just become aware of yourself and your body.
I couldn't agree more. Lindsay, I appreciate you sharing your story with us. I like to end each episode, because these episodes get kind of heavy sometimes, with something that's a little more fun. That's give people a glimpse into who you are, because this podcast is to celebrate you as well, and just the courage you have to share your story. It takes a lot, but I want people to get to know you a little bit. So, a couple of quick questions for you that our listeners can get a chance to get inside Lindsay's head a little bit. Tell us 2 things that motivate you each day.
So, of course, my kids and my husband. That's just an easy one. But for me, I think a big motivator for me is I have so many goals and so many things that I want to do, that has given me this drive that I feel like I'm working now more than ever, because I want to take on everything. I do have this hunger for like trying things and trying new things, and like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. I just have this hunger to really make a mark here before I go. So those things are the things that keep me motivated.
I know you spoke about Dr. Yang earlier. Recommend some supplements or products that he's got you on that we feel like would help people.
So, like I said, he kind of customizes your supplement treatment based off of blood work, but some common things, it sounds like, vitamin D for some reason seems to be a deficiency in a lot of cancer patients. So I do take a vitamin D supplement. I also take magnesium, and I take magnesium actually to help with my bowel movements, not to get too personal, but I mean, that's what it's all about, colon cancer. So, poop is a big thing in my house. I take magnesium. Actually, it's better than taking stool softeners, and the supplements that I get from him are, you have to get it through a nutritionist. They don't have any extra fillers or anything like that in it. So, the idea with him is everything is just very natural, and there's no additives and no extra chemicals that could be in there. So,
and for all of our listeners today, if you want to reach out to Dr. Yang, you can find him online at robertyang.net, and you can also search for him on Instagram at Robert Yang. So what's the last book that you read?
So I'm actually rereading. It's called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, I think is how you say his last name. I read this book a while ago, and it really helped me going through this journey, just kind of acknowledging how powerful habits can be, and how a lot of the things that we do every day are just a bunch of habits that we've built. So this is kind of a book that takes you through that habit loop, so you can kind of acknowledge it, so then you can learn to change it. Because in the beginning, I had a hard time with my diet. I thought I ate really well, but I now eat a lot. Now I'm much more aware of everything that's in my food. And so it was very hard for me in the beginning, and it was hard changing that lifestyle, because this isn't just a diet. This is like a whole lifestyle change. And so this book really kind of helped me to be aware of when I was in a bad habit, and to slowly kind of learn how I can change my habits to better habits. So it's a really interesting book.
Do you have a favorite recipe or a favorite food you enjoy the most?
So right now, I'd have to say it's pasta, because I'm going on a trip. I leave on Sunday, and so we've kind of been in that world, and I've been making this shrimp pasta that's really good. I would have to say pasta.
And you mentioned earlier having a lot of goals and stuff. What are 3 items that are on your bucket or life list that you want to accomplish?
So one is a lot more travel, which I'm starting, like I said, this Sunday. I got married a year ago in September, and so we're coming up on our year anniversary, and we leave Sunday for Italy for 2 weeks. So I'm really, really excited about this trip. So yeah, I think a lot more travel is in my future. It's what I want. And then I definitely want to write a book. I started on Instagram and Facebook, just kind of going back and starting from the beginning and sharing my journey and sharing the evolution of where I'm at now and how I've changed, with like the natural stuff. So I want to share all that information, but I'd love to put it into like a book one day. So hopefully that will be in the near future.
Well, Lindsay, your story today has definitely inspired me. I get to hear stories like this all the time. And there were certain points that you had mentioned that really, I was taking down notes myself. Specific parts of your story where you talked about, this has really changed your perspective in life, and it's got you back to focusing on, what your reasons are to live, and what your reasons are to move forward and to have certain conversations, and just your overall desire to live has went up when it could have went down. And even when your cancer came back and you were, having your lowest moment where you said you were just crying upstairs and your husband came in, you guys started talking, and he really encouraged you at that moment to keep fighting. And to me, that I can only imagine. I was kind of trying to play that story out in my head. Like, what would that be like if that were to happen again? And, having someone come along and encouraging you, and you got through the second round, you've been down for several months now. Your attitude is amazing. You're wanting to become an advocate even more as well. And I think that takes a tremendous amount of strength and just an overwhelming sense of knowing who you are and knowing what you're capable of doing and having the courage to put that out there. So thank you for spending about an hour with us today, going over all that information and sharing your story. It won't stop here. This podcast will travel out to thousands of people that you'll never meet or never know. But your story is going to seep into the lives of the people that need to hear it. And like we talked about God's timing earlier, someone's going to get this at the exact moment where they need it. And that's all because you were courageous enough to follow, the instructions for you to be a part of this today. So I appreciate that. And we thank you so much for being a part of the show. And we will be in touch with you really soon. And whenever your book comes out, you need to let me know, because I'll be sure to take a look at it for you. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me and doing this.
We appreciate you spending time with us on today's episode and encourage you to continue the conversation to help you keep pushing forward. For more resources based on today's episode, as well as ways to recommend a guest and connect to Truett personally, head over to 1%podcast.com. Be sure to join us next time for more stories of inspiration right here with Truett Taylor on the 1% Podcast.